Hello everyone, welcome back to Android channel. So today we are going to learn about the room database. So what exactly the room is? A room is a persistent library provided in the Jetpack components and it is created on top of the SQL database. So earlier we used to, whenever we have to implement the database in our application, we have to use the SQL database. And we have to use the cursors, content values, and we have to take care about whenever the database is getting open and whenever we have to close it, right? But with the room it's very easy and it is very smooth to access the database and to run all the queries. Okay, so let's start the example. Let's create one project. I'm just taking an empty activity and just give the room database demo. Cool. Now just finish it. Cool. So our project is ready. So the first thing we need to do is add the dependency. Okay. So the dependency which we need to add is, if we go here, it says the implementation, and since we are doing it in Java, so I'm going to pick up this implementation and the annotation processor. So the room basically works with the annotations, like each and everything we have to annotate, and on that basis it will run. Okay, so let's copy it and paste it here and let's sync it. Let's wait for the sync is completed. Cool. So the dependencies are added. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create one XML layout file to take the input and to store the data in the database. So I'm going to create the XML. So I'm going to create three input, like to take the username or the username, email and mobile number, and a button as well to take the input. So let's create the layout first. Okay, parent and to the end of parent, start to the start of parent and give an ID, username, et username. Cool. So it's very small. Let's increase the percentage, and I just want to see the design only. Cool. Okay, so and just see the padding 16 dp. Cool. And I'll add the hint as well. Enter name. Done. Now I'll copy it and I'll paste it for two more times. Et email and et number. Enter number, enter email, and since I have to put it below the edit text, top to the bottom of. If you are not aware of the constraint layout, I'll create a video on that as well. So it should be bottom of the username, and I'll just copy the same thing. I'll replace with this thing and I'll provide this email ID. Cool. Just to give some margin on top, 16 dp will be too much. 8 dp. 8 dp. Now I'm going to create one button, match parent, wrap content, and just copy the same constraints. Just give the et number over here. Margin top will be 16 dp and text will be save data. Just give the id save data, button save data, and on click event will be save data. Okay, so we are done with our UI part. Now the next thing is we need to find the IDs inside the our activity. Okay, so let's find the IDs, edit text, username, email and number. Okay, so we have find all the IDs of the edit text. Now on the click of the button, we need to validate the inputs and we have to store the data in the database, right? So before going to the storing part, so first thing we need to create the table, right, in which we have to store the data. So to create the table, we have the annotation called entity in the room database. So that annotation can be applied to any model class. Okay, so for that we need to create one Java class. I'm taking a name as user. So the username is created, user class is created, and we have to define all the variables over here. Private string name, private string email, private string number. Okay, now let's create getter and setter as well. Okay, so we have created a getter and setter as well. Now this is a model class and we have to annotate this class with the @entity. So @entity, we have to use the android_x.room one. So now the room database will know like this user class is an entity, and by default it will create it will take the user as a table name. But if you want to give anything else, then you can give as well table name, and you can give your table here like table user. Okay, otherwise by default it will take the user as a table, and whatever the column, the fields you had defined inside the user table, that will be treated your columns, and then like the name, email and number will be your column names, right? And uh, if you want something else your column name, then you can be you can do like with the column info, and here you can provide the name, right? So I can provide like name, email, and same thing which goes with the number. Okay, so here I can give the phone number, right? So on that basis it will create the name as well. Now if you have something like default values as well, like if you want to give default value to the particular column, so you can do that, but I don't have anything such requirements, so I'm not doing anything that. Okay, so we are done here. Till now this process will cover like how we have to create an entity or a table in the room. Okay, now next thing is we have to create the database access object, DAO. Okay, so the database access object is a kind of interface on an abstract class which will help us to access the particular table from the database to display the data or to any kind of database operations. So I'm going user DAO. Okay, so basically this will be an interface. Okay, and this thing we have to annotate with the DAO. Whenever we are annotating with the DAO, so it is going to generate the implementation class at the compile time. Okay, so now we have to define the all the methods that we have to do, right? So the first thing is we have to insert the data in the database. So void insert. Okay, and we have to pass the user as an object. That's it. Okay, so this is going to insert the data. The next thing is we have to annotate this method as an insert. Okay, so annotating the @insert means it will run the insert query, it will create everything, and it will run the insert query. It will take the values from the user object and it will assign to all the columns. Okay, and it has a conflict policy as well. Okay, so on conflict strategy dot ignore replace or anything else, so you can go here and you can conflict strategy you want to add. So whenever you are inserting any item in the database and is there any confliction between the data, right, so you can select whether it should abort or it should replace or it should ignore. Okay, so I'm selecting the replace, like the data should be replaced with the existing data. Okay, so we have written the insert query. Now the next thing is we have to retrieve the data, right? So the retrieving data will be in the list of user object get all users and user sorry, yeah. So we have to get all the users and we have to write the queries. So we have to annotate with the query, and here we have to write the query select star from and the table name. So if you write the user, it will automatically take the table user which you have provided over here. Okay, so in this way the internal part, like how to deal with the cursor and all, it will automatically handle, and in return it will give you the list of users. Now till this part we have created our database access object, and now the next thing is we have to create the database. And to create the database, I'm giving a name my database, and this thing should extend the room database. So if you see it's giving the error, so you just have to see that the class my database must either be declared abstract or implement abstract method create open helper database configuration database. So basically we have to, it should be abstract one, so I'm making it abstract, so the error is gone. Now the next thing is we have to annotate with the database, and in the database we have to provide all the entities, means all the tables which should be part of the of this database. Okay, so the first thing is user dot class, and you have multiple tables, then you can define it an array like this, and another user dot class or any other class name. Okay, and the next thing is we have to provide the version. The version is the same thing we used to do in the SQL database, like for each and every, if you have to do any alteration in the column, alteration of column in the table, right, so that time we have to upgrade the table, means upgrade the database version. The same thing will goes here as well. Now the next thing is we have to provide the access to the user DAO that we have created. So for that, public user DAO, that's it. Okay, so yeah, so we have to abstract. Cool. So this is how we are going to access it. So till now we have created the entity, we have created the DAO, we have created the database. Now we have to create a method. It's not a method, it's like we have to initialize the database, right? So to initialize the database, let's go to the documentation and see how exactly they are initializing it. Yeah, see, so this is the way of the initialization. So let's see how. Private void initiate db. Okay, so here is, let's import the room database. Here we have to pass our database name. Okay, room data room dot database builder, and here we have to pass the context. So since the database is going to be used throughout the application, so it's better to pass the get application context instead of the current context. And here we have to pass the our database class name, and this will be your database names. Okay, so my database and this build, that's it. So in this way we can create our database. So let make it global so we can access in our application, in our app, and just call this method initiate db. Okay, so this method will initiate the db, like to create the instance of the db class. Now let's move to the storing part. So here first thing we need to get all the get email dot get text dot to string dot trim to remove the white spaces. Get okay, so first will be the name, email and number. Cool. So now we have to check validations. If textutils dot is empty, get name, uh, textutils dot I'll copy the same thing, get email and get number. So if any one of this is empty, then I'm going to show the toast. Please input all the please enter all the inputs, and if everything is fine, then here we have to insert the data in the database. Okay, so yeah, name. So now first thing we have to create the user as an object. New user dot set. We have to set everything over here. Get name, set email, set number, get email. Okay, now the next thing is we have to take the instance of the database dot, we have to get the user DAO as an access. Now we have to insert the, and we have to pass a user. So by doing this, it should insert our data in the database. Okay, so till now let's see whether our code is working or not. So let's run this project. Okay, so the first error which we got is an entity must have at least one field annotated with the primary key. So that means if you're creating a table, at least one of your column should be a primary key. So I'll create one more thing, private int id at the rate column info, name, row id. Okay, and how you are going to annotate with the primary key, so that will be at the rate primary key, and it should be auto incremented, right? So I'm making it auto generate as true, so it will be it will auto generate itself. Now let's create and get an setter for it for this as well. Cool. Now let's run it again. Okay, so it's successful. So let's see. Okay, so let's add the necessary things. Cool. Logcat. This is our room database. We'll open the logs as well so that we can see whether if any exception is coming or not. Okay, so I'm going to enter the input. So by first thing I'm going to validate whether it's is checking the input or not. So I'm clicking on save data. It's showing me the toast. Perfect. Now let's input it. I have not validated the proper email or the proper number and all because it's just a basic demo. Now I'm going to click on the in save data. So the app got crashed. Okay, so if you see here what exactly it is saying, so illegal state exception, and here the error is cannot access database on the main thread since it may potentially lock the UI for a longer period of time. So whenever we are working on the room, so here they have restricted like you cannot run the database operation on the main thread. Okay, so as you're working on the Java, so either we can use RX Java, but to use RX Java we have to add the dependency, and if you're working on the Kotlin, then we can use the coroutines. And so in Java I'm going to use the executor service. So if you are not aware of the executor service, so I'm going to create one more video on that so that you'll get to know. So basically executor service is a class that will help you to run anything on the background thread. Okay, so executor service, executors dot new single thread executor. So we need to run on a single thread only. So executor service, so only the operation part we have to insert over there. Okay, so dot execute new runnable. Cool, just put it over here. Done. Now let's hit the run button again, and let's see. Okay, now I'm going to enter the details again, and let's open the logs as well. Okay, save data. So now there is no exception, but we don't know whether the data is inserted properly or not, right? So for that I'm going to do a little bit change. So first thing, whenever we are inserting the data, it is going to return a id, right? The inserted id where it is inserted, so it is going to return a long, correct? Now over here I can consume the id. So that means if my id is greater than 0, that means the data is inserted. If it is not, that means there is some issue. So here also I'm going to show the toast data insertion failed, and here success. Okay, now let's run it again. Cool. So now enter the inputs, save data, it got crashed. Okay, so it's saying cannot toast a thread that is not called looper.prepare. So since you're using the executors, so the executor will run on the background thread, and on the background thread we are displaying the toast, which is a UI part. So to touch the UI part in the executor service, we have to use the handlers. So private handler compat dot create async looper dot main looper for the main thread. Okay, so now only this part handler dot post new enable, only the if else part we have to keep it inside over here. Now let's run it again. Cool, let's done. So it's showing the toast that data insertion success. So that means the data is getting inserted properly without any error. Now the next part is we have to display the data which we have inserted in the database. So for that we have to create one list view. So let's create one list view at the below this list view. Match parent match parent, done. Copy it, and I'll create one button as well, that on the clicking on of that button it is going to show the data. Button show data, it will be on the below this thing. Okay, and show data, and it will be below this thing. 0dp, it will be on the bottom of parent. Cool. And id list view data. Okay, so we have created our list view. Now let's first add the click event. Click event is done. Now private list view. Okay, let's find the id. Done, id is find it. And now we have to create the item row for the list view. So let's go ahead and create item list. Done, we have created. Now just add a text view, match parent, wrap content, id, item, data, top to the top of parent and to the end of parent, start to the start of parent. Cool. And just tools text data, import it, increase the size of the text to 16 dp sp, just add the padding 16 dp. Cool. Okay, so now let's come here, and now let's create an adapter for it. List adapter, okay, extend it with the base adapter, and the object we are going to get to the list of users, user list, and the context. Okay, so let's create the constructor. Done. Inflator, done. And here we have to pass the user list dot size and the object user list dot get I, simply I. Okay, so we have to create our view. V is equal to inflator dot inflate dot layout dot item list view group false. Okay, so after this we have to find the id. So okay, so I'll create the static class view holder, private text view, label, initiate view, uh, item data and void bind data user done. So label dot set text user dot get name user dot get email and user dot get number. Okay, so let's add some more space. Done. Now let's use the view holder over here. View holder equal to null if view holder equal to null, then we have to view holder equal to new view holder. We can use a constructor here, I think. And just copy this code over here. Done. And we have to use the tag to view dot set tag view holder view dot get tag. This we have to cast it in the view holder. And here view holder dot bind data user list dot get position. Okay, so binding is done. Okay, so view is equal to null. Done. Now we have to use the list adapter in our main activity. It's list adapter Okay, so whenever I'll click on this button, I have to get the data from the database and display on the list view. Okay, so the first thing is I have to db dot user dot get all users. This will be list of users, list users user list. Okay, done. Now since we cannot access the database on the main thread, we have to use the executor service dot execute new runnable. Fetching is done. Now here the adapter we have to use list adapter equal to new list adapter. Context will be the main activity dot this and user list and list view dot set adapter list adapter. And this is a UI part, so it has to go in the handler dot post new runnable and paste it over here. Done. Now let's run our project and let's see whether we see the data or not. Okay, so I'm clicking on the show data button. So if you see, I'm seeing 3 records, so which I've inserted earlier. So now I'm going to insert the proper record. John at the rate XYZ com, and the number will be anything. Save data. Data is inserted successfully. Show data. See, the list got updated and it is showing me the updated data. Okay, so in this way we can access the data, we can insert the data, right? Now the next part is to delete the data. Okay, so to delete the data, what we need to do is we need to create one more method over here, which is void delete, and we have to pass the object which we need to delete, and we have to annotate with the delete. That's it. And if you want to know the number of records or the rows get deleted, you can make it as an integer, so it will return you the number of records that got deleted. Now just will come here. Now we have to implement the click event on the item click event on the list view. So list view dot set on item click listener. Okay, and here we have to delete the item. So again we have to use executor service dot execute new runnable. Okay, and db dot delete, db dot user dot delete. Now the first thing is we need to get the user object over here, right? So from the adapter use user use, we can create one method inside our adapter to get the particular object. Cool, list adapter dot get item, we have to pass the object over here and we have to cast it inside the user and just pass it int rows affected. Okay, now I'm checking if for before that I have to use the handler. Done, and here I have to check if rows affected is greater than 0. Instead of that I'm directly show toast number of rows affected will be rows affected. Done. In this way it is going to delete the particular data from the data as well, and I have to update the list view as well. So list adapter, so I have to create one method inside over here to remove it. Public void remove data index user list dot remove index and notify dataset changed. Okay, so now list adapter dot remove data and the index which I'm removing, so that index I have to pass only in case when the I is greater than 0, means whenever the data is affected. Okay, not I, it's basically rows affected. Cool. So now let's run it and let's see whether the data is getting deleted or not. Okay, so just click on show data, data is getting shown. So I'm just clicking on the second record. See, the number of rows affected 1, it's getting deleted, it's getting deleted, it's getting deleted, right? Now I'm clicking on show data, nothing to be shown. Now if I'm going to insert the new record, save data, show data, click on it, data is getting removed, right? So in this way we can delete the data from the room as well. Now the next thing is to update the data on the table. So void update user @ update. Okay, so here, so in the delete and update method, how it will get to know which data I need to delete, because sometimes the email ID and the other thing can be same, right? So on the basis of the primary ID, it is going to decide which record it has to update or which record it has to delete, right? And the same thing in the update also we have to note with the @update, and it is also going to return the number of rows affected. So to update the data, I'm going to create one. I'm going to create two radio button. Okay, so I'll just take one checkbox, match parent, wrap content, ID. So update, just copy this constraint, show data, and it will become on the below of it, and the text will be will update the data on checked. So basically whenever if I'm going to if the checkbox is checked, that means whenever you will click on the list item, so that time it is going to update the data, and if it is not checked, that time it is going to delete the table data. Okay, so update checkbox, just find the ID over here, checkbox, okay. So I'm going to check it over here. If inside the handler, if checkbox dot is checked, then I have to update the data, else I have to okay, so just paste it over here, paste it over here, user dot update. So to update, I'm just making a hard-coded email ID change, user dot set email. Since we have the user object above here, so I'm using the same user object, because I'm not creating new one, because the existing user object will be having a primary key as well, that row ID. So let's suppose xyz at gmail.com. Okay, so the rows affected, number of rows affected, I'm printing it, and instead of removing data, I'm just going to call the notify dataset change, and rows affected only if it is greater than 0. Okay, so let's hit the run button and let's see. Okay, so save data, nothing to so if you see, there are so many datas are there. So if I'm going to click any one of the record, so it's going to delete it right now. But if I enable the checkbox, then if I click on it, then it's going to update the data. If you see, okay, the data is getting updated, and if I'll click on it again, then it's going to delete it. Okay, so in this way we can update the data and we can delete the data as well. Okay, So I hope you understand this all the operations of the room database, and you get to know like how to integrate the room database in any one of your applications. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe.